Hi, everyone. I'm Catherine Anaya. Welcome to the Women's Eye podcast. This is where I chat with inspiring women making a difference and changing lives. This episode is brought to you by CASCO Financial Group in Phoenix, Arizona. Catherine Scrivano is the president of CASCO Financial Group. She started her business to help people create the financial strength they need to achieve their dreams. And she believes you don't have to be wealthy to be wise. Today, Catherine Scrivano is my guest here on the Women's Eye podcast. Good to see you, Catherine.
Good morning. Good seeing you.
Thank you. So I'm looking forward to our chat today because we're talking about something very important, life insurance, what you need to know if you have it, if you don't have it, and if you're thinking about buying it. So thank you for making the time to talk about this. So let's start with talking about if you're thinking about purchasing life insurance, or if it's been a while since you purchased your policy. This is probably a really good time to review a few things, right?
It really is. Life insurance is owned by people who love someone. And if we can look at it as a gesture of goodwill and continuing to care for those we care about, it's not quite as intimidating or morbid a task as it might feel like otherwise. And our lives change. And frankly, the need and the type of life insurance that we might have on board is probably going to change too.
Well, and there are so many types of life insurance contracts that are available. I think sometimes it can be a little confusing. So for this conversation, we're focusing though on the death benefit, which is the dollar amount your designated beneficiaries will receive when you die. I know that's, a lot to think about, but it is a weighty decision nonetheless, right?
And a lot of times people underestimate the life insurance need. They purchase it just based solely on the cost instead of the benefit and how that benefit may or may not be appropriate for their circumstance. And by the same token, it's possible to have really more life insurance than you need.
So interesting. We'll delve more into that. How do you go about determining how much life insurance we need?
There are two basic approaches, and I firmly encourage everyone to start with the basics, and you can always get more convoluted and complicated as you desire later on. But really figuring out what the appropriate death benefit for you is, there's a couple of ways of looking at that. The first and really simplest one is thinking about replacing income. So if anyone is relying on your ability to bring home a paycheck, a pension check, your Social Security check, any of those kinds of things, think about what an average lifespan might be for you. And what is that number? How much is the income going to be over that period of time? You'll need to think about things like cost of living increases and inflation, maybe anticipated salary increases. And also think about what would the earnings be on a lump sum benefit. If your survivors were to receive an amount of money all at once, part of that income replacement could be taken care of by the amount of money that they would earn on that lump sum.
So that is the income replacement calculation approach. There's another approach you like to talk about, and that is the family needs approach.
Right.
How does that differ?
Now we're looking really at the expenses and anticipating how the family would continue to live after you're gone. It breaks down generally into three categories. The first being, what are the immediate financial needs? Things like funeral expenses, maybe there's estate taxes or settlement costs. Perhaps it's your desire that your family pay off a mortgage or any credit card debt. And if that's something that your family agrees with, that would be an immediate need to be able to just look at the emergency funds and cash that would be needed right away. Then consider ongoing needs. Living expenses like food, clothing, shelter, transportation, those are going to vary in amount. They're also going to vary in duration. If you have young children, there's probably going to be an ongoing need for perhaps at least until they're in or out of college, And then maybe those things might drop off. Not so true these days. A lot of kids still coming home, but kind of just modeling the expectation of your family's life without you and what the financial impact is. Something that is often missed in this analysis is think about the potential for having to spend money to replace things that you are doing. For instance, maybe now childcare is going to be a cost that the family isn't paying for right now. Home maintenance, maybe I'm particularly handy around the house. If I'm gone, my survivors would have to pay someone to do those kinds of things. That's a real stretch. I'm not handy around the house. And then there might be some special funding needs. Maybe there's a goal to pay for education or charitable bequests. Very often are fulfilled through life insurance. So you can just kind of figure out what expenses might be ongoing and then look at whatever the family's financial assets are to meet those. Any difference, life insurance may be able to fulfill that gap.
Mm-hmm. Well, like you mentioned, the cost and the availability of life insurance is not a one size fits all. So what factors then determine whether we even qualify for life insurance?
And sometimes people are surprised to find out that there is a qualification required. The cost of life insurance, the ability to even purchase life insurance are going to be determined by your age and your health. So having this conversation sometimes with younger people, they think, oh, life insurance is something I can delay thinking about. But frankly, from a cost perspective, they're never going to pay less for life insurance than they are right now when they're younger and healthier. Mm-hmm. I was introduced to a widow a number of years ago, a particularly sad situation. Her husband died very unexpectedly. She had 2 young children. And as I was going through their resources, I asked about life insurance. And her response was, no, that was something we didn't think you needed to consider until you were in your 40s. Now, here's a woman, my recollection is she was in her late 20s, early 30s, left with these 2 children to support. The need for life insurance was not dependent on age, but family circumstances. But they had in their mind that life insurance was for older people. So that's just an example of kind of turning that around, looking at the obligation and the goals and seeing if life insurance is the answer.
But there are still some older people out there who don't have life insurance. Is this something that you believe everyone should have?
I really don't. It's an individual case-by-case basis. Older people with sufficient assets to meet their goals, they don't really need to be paying life insurance premiums. On the other hand, that same person who has goals or obligations that could be met through a death benefit should be talking to life insurance companies sooner rather than later while they're still insurable. But be prepared, it's going to be more expensive than it would have been had they purchased their policies earlier.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're talking about expenses. Is life insurance affordable? I mean, what is dependent on that?
Remember that in essence, you're talking to a life insurance company saying, I will give you X number of dollars in premium. And if I die, you will give my family or the charity or whoever I've named as beneficiary a lot more than that. So the life insurance company's perspective is we want to collect those premiums so we can pay death benefits, but we can only accept people who are not likely to be the result of a claim anytime soon. They want to collect a lot of premiums. So one thing that I encourage people to do as you're reviewing is you may have life insurance right now that you bought when you were younger, but perhaps you were a smoker and you could go back to the insurance company. If you're like me, I'm 16 years a non-smoker, and I literally was able to go back to my insurance company after 5 years of not smoking. And that got my premium reduced. Mm-hmm. Isn't that amazing? So
yes,
it's older than when I bought it, but it cost me less because the insurance company was looking at my status as a smoker when I originally purchased the plan. So there's a great incentive to review your existing policies and see if you can adapt what you already have, or perhaps you need to do something different. But identifying your needs and your situation on a regular basis is the key.
That is great advice. I would not have thought about that, but now I'm going to look at my policy and see if there's anything that maybe I can change. So as is the case with any financial decision, though, there is a lot to consider with life insurance. What is your advice for people, regardless of age, getting started with life insurance?
I think anyone can undergo the analysis that you and I have talked about. Those are really fairly simple. Don't try and make them exact, but just get in the general idea of how much insurance might be appropriate for you. And then I strongly encourage you to work with a professional in this area to look at a lot of different companies and a lot of different options. This is frankly an area where people go online and they think they can do a lot of policy comparison, which they can, but that appropriateness is really something that a professional can help you make sure that you're spending money that's going to make sense for your family in case you're gone, and hopefully be available to you for a very long time. You don't want something that's not going to pay when the time is right. And there's so many additional benefits and contract features that can be utilized in insurance. But really remember, you're purchasing that death benefit for a specific reason. Start there. Know what it is, know what's necessary. Work with a professional to make sure it's a customized plan for your goals.
Like you said, you don't have to be wealthy to be wise, and that's why we're talking about it.
Right.
Thank you, Catherine, so much. I want to let folks know that they can learn more about you by going to our website, thewomenseye.com. And I also want to take a moment to let everyone know that The Women's Eye has 2 books. The first one is called 20 Women Changemakers. You can shop for it wherever you buy books and at changemakersbook.com. And our newest book is called 20 Women Storytellers. It is out right now. You can find out more about that at womenstorytellersbook.com. That's going to do it for this episode of the Women's Eye podcast. I thank you so much for joining me. And thank you, Catherine Scrivano. Always good to see you and talk to you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
And I'm Catherine Anaya. Until next time, remember, it's the world as we see it.